Welcome everybody to another video talking about my two crawlers here and the event I recently took them to. This crawler looks a little bit different. It used to be this Power Wagon body from FMS right here, and pretty sweet body, but at the event I won this cliffhanger body and I've been working on it. Just got it basically painted. And I've got some stickers ready to go. I did not realize that this came with masking for the windows. I wish I would have realized that earlier on. But I'll be doing those today, I think. And I wanted to talk about these crawlers in the state that they're in. So I have two crawlers because I drive one and my son drives the other. He chooses whichever one he wants and I'll drive the other one. At the event, I mostly drove this C10, which unfortunately, its servo met its end. So I'm gonna go ahead and swap that out while we're at it here today. So like I said, this servo met its end. Let's turn it on and I'll show you what I'm running into. And there we go. Sort of works, but you can hear very rapidly it slows down and loses its power. So obviously it's broken and needs swapped out. Got one on order. I don't know when it'll be here, but I've been waiting for a little while. However, my dad has one of these crawlers and he already swapped out his servo. So he gave me his old stock servo here. So I'm just gonna direct swap it here real quick. Should be super easy. Now, at the event, most people were running 10th scale stuff. There were more 24th scale than they expected to see, but most of them were pretty well stock. Which is, you know, where this is, it's mostly stock. I haven't done that much work to it yet. And the owner was talking about how great these little 24th scales are. And I 100% agree. These things are awesome. They're really capable for what they are, for being such a tiny, you know, the scale is part of what the appeal of these little guys are. You know, a lot of people will get those 10th scales and see these as sort of a knockoff, little kid toy version of everything. But honestly, that's not how it is at all. It's just smaller. To me, I really enjoy this small scale for one reason mainly. Anything is an obstacle. You don't have to go try to find something to run these on. I have two little boys, and they always have toys across the house. And if I'm looking, if I just want to drive one of these just cause, all I have to do is go and drive it across the house. Toys make great obstacles. It's pretty amazing how well it works, actually. There we go. Got the old guy out. No problemo. Let's go and pop the new one in. But these 24th scale crawlers are extremely capable for what they are. And you don't have to go, like I said, you don't have to go and try to find somewhere to run it. You can just run it wherever. It really is the biggest advantage of them. The other big advantage, in my opinion, is, well, price. These are much, much cheaper to run. I mean, they've gone up a bit, as everything else has recently. They start somewhere around, depending on the model and which brand you get, I think you can sort of start finding them around the $100 mark. This guy was $130 for me when I got it. The Power Wagon over here, this guy was like $140, $150. They're all going up, but still, to get a decent 10th scale, you're usually talking at least 4 times that in what I've seen. So these are cheap, they're easy to work on, plus, big benefit for me is they don't take up much space when you're not driving them. I mean, think about it. I know how I am. I know I'm going to end up with probably half a dozen of these at a very minimum. But a half dozen of these versus a half dozen 10th scales, that's a pretty significant difference. The stock servo was fine until I upgraded the steering and glued the horn. So really, it's probably perfectly fine for stock when it comes down to it. This is a bit of an interesting mod that I was messing around with. My transmitter here, no spring. It actually stays wherever you put it, which is interesting. It works out pretty good for crawling, but not so good for anything else. It was just a concept. It's got some 3D printed parts in there. I'm not sure if it's gonna work out like that or not. See, this is sort of the behavior I had on the other servo before it gave out. If I move it just a tiny bit, it moves more than I'm steering in very strange amounts. I think I'm gonna have to remove those O-rings and see if that solves my problem. Oop, there it went. Set them in there. If you don't have one of these for working on any RC, but especially these little 24th scale, definitely get one. This is a soldering pad. It's for keeping track of things while you're soldering. It works fantastically. You've got all of these little spots over here for keeping your screws in. There's some magnetic spots. There's also these where you could, hold up your tool if you care about that. Which, maybe I will stick all these over here. Something like that. But it helps keep everything very organized. I highly recommend them. I'll link to this one in the description. And there's one of your downsides to this 24th scale stuff. Actually grabbing a hold of this tiny stuff and working on it, and even to a certain degree just seeing it can be quite difficult. So it isn't for everyone, but man, I like them. Well, I'm not sure it's even worth me messing with this one before that new one comes in. In fact, I think I'm gonna put my O-ring back on that thing and just pull this servo all together. I don't think this guy is gonna be running. I wasn't sure how well it was gonna work or not, but that's all right. But yeah, this servo was giving me a hard time the entire time. The way that steering is kind of like quick to go from one side to the other, kind of zips around. You have basically no finesse. It basically got rid of all modulation on the steering. And even that being said, this truck, all I have done to it is, as far as what's gonna help it on the course. Here, I'll just go over my whole mod list real quick, because it is not a long one. I've had this for a couple of years actually now, and I enjoy it. There's a while there where I killed the battery in the charger. The stock chargers on these things stink, so it was just a shelf queen for a while. But things I've actually gotten to do with this. I've got, obviously, not stock wheels and tires on it. That was a big one. That makes a huge, huge difference. I recommend that to be everybody's first mod. These are some Endura beadlocks. I went for some that looked a little bit more era appropriate for the truck, I suppose. I like them for this more stock looking build. So I've got that, and I've got, if you look up in there, an Endura red motor. I killed the stock motor, and then I actually put a hot racing motor in it, and due to misuse, killed it as well and upgraded to this one. It's worked out pretty well for me, all in all. You're obviously gonna kill motors if you're misusing it, which is what I was doing. The stock motors go out on these things pretty quick. They don't have a lot of torque, and they tend to overheat if you run them real hard. But this one's been rock solid for me. Because I have this bigger battery pack, like I said, the stock one burned out on me. So I have this big battery pack that just fits under the C10 body here. This is 1,000 milliamp hour. Here, I'll show you what it actually is. It's 1,000 milliamp hour, Amazon special, came with a 2-bay charger. 2 batteries was something like 30 bucks. But this just fits. That's why it kind of, you'll notice that this holds up a little bit. Doesn't quite fall down on those body posts. And I have to push it down. It's kind of stretching the body just a tiny bit. Like, you can't even actually see it, but it does run into it just a little bit there. So that's the only other thing I run, but because of that extra weight, I've got these, they're actually 3D printed little spacers right there on our shocks. I don't know if you can actually tell that or not. But yeah, there you go. Maybe you can tell on the split side. So I have that on all 4 corners to kind of preload the shocks, the springs. And otherwise, previously it was basically riding a full droop, fully compressed setup, which is not what I wanted. So I added those spacers to get it back up and going. And then obviously I've got my little cooler here, which is awesome, by the way. 3D printed, and if you look in the lid of the body there, I've got a few magnets scattered around. So I have magnets for the cooler over here in this corner, and then magnets for the traction boards to stick up in there. So you can see they're not going anywhere. That's my full list of mods, so not that many. And this thing is really, really capable. Even with the steering as jacked up as it was for the whole event, this performed really well. Until it went out the rest of the way and totally died, I was able to do basically every section, and it was not an easy course. The other stock trucks, there was a Gladiator and a Bronco there. Those ones were actually struggling because they have the hard bodies and they had a higher center of gravity. But this C10, man, it did amazing. I am very pleased with it. Like I said, I've been running 2 because my son wanted to drive with me. And he did. He drove this one with this body for the entirety of the event. And he did really, really good. I'll cut in some footage there. He's only 6, and man, for what that course was and how hard it was, he blew me away. He did it. Oh. Why did movie recording stop? Card 2 full. Oh, okay, just a sec, guys. Well, like I said, he drove this for the event, and it was in the same territory as the Gladiator and the Bronco. It's a hard body here, but it still performed pretty well. This guy has got a lot more clearance. It's got a lot more suspension travel than those other trucks. It is a 24th scale, even though this cab looks quite a bit larger when you put it next to something like this. And in general, the clearance, it sits a lot higher. Old Power Wagons did have really big cabs, so it sort of makes sense. And this thing's awesome. I didn't have any issues with it during the event, other than I had the body pop off a couple of times. Nonetheless, this thing's awesome. If you haven't seen them before, they're awesome little crawlers. You've got this low speed kind of standard crawling, and then you've got a 2-speed transmission, and you can haul butt. This thing's awesome. I love it. They're kind of the new up-and-coming champion, quite frankly. I think that they're a great new option. The event was a blast. And as I mentioned, at the event, I won this cliffhanger body. This is first body I've ever done. I painted it. I've got a little section over here. It fell and hit the ground, kind of goofed up the paint, but I painted on the outside as well. I prefer that way just because when it gets scratched up, it looks more realistic. Now, I've been rambling for a while. What I'm getting at is these things are awesome, and you should definitely get out there and go buy some 24th scale, because they're awesome, they're cheap, they're a great entry spot. If you haven't done RC before, they are great. That being said, we'll definitely have some more content on these guys coming up. I have completely fallen in love. So if you're interested, go ahead and subscribe, and I will catch you guys in the next one.